we will need, this is all Primo, 1 black, 3 burnt umber, 1 bronze and 2 whites. And remember, I've shown you before many times, I place them all 3/4 over the other one. Now watch how I'm placing one of the whites. I'm going to put it like this so you can see easier. It's easier if you place it half on the other white. Then flatten it a little bit. And then cut it in half so we can form a rectangle. And now I am going to pull in the corners, and then I will place part of the copper, not all of it. See, almost all the way to the left end, but then I place the remaining black, and then just a strip of the copper going all the way to the end of the white. And then I'm going to use my roller until I can get it through the pasta machine on the thickest setting. And make my Skinner blend until I can do a jelly roll with the darker part inside. I am going with it through the pasta machine on the thinnest setting, so I can get a very, very refined gradient. Then once I make my jelly roll, I will have to square it. So you don't need it round. You will need it actually in a lozenge shape. But first you will start obviously with a square. And for this I'm going to use my acrylic block. Simply pressing on straight angle sides until I can form a square. Then once my square is nicely formed and even and pretty, then I will slant it so it would form a lozenge. And that will be pretty much my snake skin pattern. It's more like a rattlesnake pattern, but this is fairly common and fairly usual. Everybody sees it as a snake skin pattern, so that's how we go. Now I'm going first to make my base, and that is just simply some scrap clay that I have gone through the pasta machine with, and it is about 1 1/8 inch, and I am using a tumbler as a base. Careful with the tumblers, most of them are slanted. You have to find one that is perfectly cylindrical. I got this one at Goodwill. I think I paid like, I don't know, 30 cents for it. And after you're sure that it is well stuck to the tumbler, or watch from the inside to make sure it didn't trap any kind of air pockets, take as point of reference the edge of the tumbler to cut your strip perfectly straight. So you need to get to about 1 1/8 inch. The final bangle will be 1 1/4 inch, but the remaining will come from the veneer we put on top of it. So do it on both sides, and then bake it for about 40 minutes, and after you bake it, gently sand it. Now while it's baking, let's make our veneer. This veneer is actually mokume gane based. Stamp mokume gane, and I am first cutting some slices from my cane about 1 millimeter thick, and I have a sheet of black that is on the thickest setting because it's going to thin out some. and I am placing my slices, and they don't have to be perfectly equal. The pattern on a snake skin is not perfectly geometrically perfect or whatever, especially on the rattlesnakes. Believe me, I live in rattlesnake country. And you see, I am placing first a row of slices in the middle, and then the next slices I will cut them in half in length and place them so they would form a pattern, and you can already see the snakeskin pattern. After I place all of them, and I made a little bit extra because I want to make some earrings for my bangle too, and they are not part of the tutorial. But anyway, after you place all your slices, what you need to do is to press the slices in the black. And you do that essentially by pressing down. You do not want a lot of deformation on the sides or whatever. They will deform a little bit and they will run one into the other. But you want essentially to first press them down. Yeah, I know I have a little dot of white there that got there, I don't know how, but that's fine. It will be just fine. Now press those slices in. After they are well established, you can use your roller on, after which you put on top of them a sheet of black on the thinnest manageable setting on your pasta machine. And when you place it, make sure that you do not trap any air bubbles. And I did brighten up the screen a little bit so you can see better what I am doing, because that is black and if it's dark you cannot see a thing. You need to try and make sure that it is even, that you don't really see any of the slices popping out, because for the next step you need a perfectly even surface. And then I am going to use this is from the Dollar Tree, but you can use any kind of wire netting. It will give you the impression of snake scales. And because my strip is a little bit longer than the vessel is the wide diameter of the vessel, I'm going to do first half. Now here you have to be very careful. You need to press it enough to form deep enough imprints, but not press it too much to make it go through the netting. So very, very careful how much you do. You should feel the clay on your fingers coming almost to the next side. That's why I told you you need it on the thickest setting. Then I'm going to gently roll out part of the end so I can put in the remaining strip. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing so I can get a good imprint of the wire netting. And yeah, I did try with many other things. You can use like a mosquito netting if you want to do it smaller, on a smaller scale, but then you'll have to make your cane much smaller. You'll have to reduce it. But here I wanted to go for something that would be almost pretty much life size. And see, that's the beauty of polymer clay. This is why I love it, because see, this is faux snake skin, and we make faux ivory, and we make faux bone, and the faux wood, and a whole bunch of other things. And because of that, we can get the same look without any living beings being harmed in the process. Now, once you got your imprint, then all you have to do is to shave it. And you will see how slowly the snakeskin pattern comes to the surface. Isn't that gorgeous? Just be careful and don't shave too deep, because you want to keep those little black netting thingy. That's what's making the scale look like a scale. I did shave a little bit too much in a couple spots, but still it's fine. And yeah, as I said, they will not look perfect. They will not look perfectly symmetrical and geometrical, but this is how a snake skin is. As a real snake does not have perfect geometrical patterns on the back. Very, 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 very rarely they will. Most of the time they do have some deformations here and there. The lozenges are not the diamonds are not perfect. As I said, only in very few species of snakes you will find a perfect pattern. So just go like this, after which you need to flatten and smooth your surface, again with a lot of care not to distort the pattern. After which we are ready to place it on the bangle. So in the meantime the bangle got baked, and I did let it cool, and then I'm going to take another strip that's about 1/2 inch wide and measure it first to make sure that it is the proper size. Measure it with about 1/8 of an inch less, because it's going to extend a little bit as you're placing it. Then place bacon bond on the back, and then place it as close to the very middle of your base as you can. And after you place it, and again be careful not to trap any kind of air pockets. See how it's slightly a little bit longer, even if I cut it shorter. And after you place it, again you'll have to cut a perfect edge from the edge of the base, which is not very hard to do. You can actually take measurements with your blade itself. And after you cut it, gently start slanting it towards the edge with your roller. And once you do it on both sides, then you'll start gently feathering the clay towards the edge. This is how you will obtain a perfectly domed bangle. But the cutting of the edge, even if it doesn't look that straight now, that ensures that you have an equal amount of clay that will get feathered towards the edge. And after you do this on both sides, then you can smooth it out with alcohol to make sure that you don't have, remember alcohol slightly dissolves the clay, so if you have any little dips, it will cover them up. Then once you do that, even if at this point we would have raw clay on raw clay, nevertheless I am going to still place some bacon bond on the base that's on the tumbler, and you have to place some bacon bond also on the very edges to ensure that that veneer gets perfectly adhered to the base. Make sure that also that you don't skip any little spot when you're smearing the bacon bond. And then start placing the veneer, cut a straight edge on one end and start placing the veneer. If it doesn't fit perfectly at the end, you can stretch it a little bit, so you can kind of match the diamond. See how it's not really matching very well here, so I'm going to remove it and then very gently stretch it a little bit. And I'm sorry that part of it is a little bit out of the camera, but it's kind of big and it's hard to keep in the camera view what I'm doing and the vessel itself. So see, I'm trying to match the two diamonds. As I said, it's not perfect, but it's so close that it will not really matter when you look at the bangle in the end. Then check with your roller if you have placed the veneer properly, and check for any possible air pockets that you might have trapped, because you should be able to see them right away. And then I'm going to use, again, remember I like to use the tiny Pandora's cane benders, the thin ones, as thin rollers, but you can use for this the handle of a paintbrush. I'm going to pretty much mark and also press the edge towards the edge of the backing, in the edge of the backing, and this will give me a perfect line to cut the excess clay, because you can see the backing strip underneath. And then I will take that line into consideration when starting to trim the excess clay. And once you have cut all the excess clay, make sure that you cut it perfectly even all over. Again, take the edge of the tumbler as a reference point. This will be the longest part pretty much, because here there's not something that you can fix by sanding. You need to make an absolutely perfect trimming. This will take the longest, honestly. But if you want a beautiful, perfectly looking bangle, you will do it. You know, sometimes claying is a work of patience. Most of the time it is a work of patience. So once you are doing all of that, then take again your paintbrush handle, or if you have the little cane benders, and press the edge in. And after you press the edge in, yes, you will be able to sand it to perfection, but you have to press it evenly in. And after you press it in, you gently round the upper edge, so you will have it nice, smooth and domed. And then you are ready to bake. And I baked again for 45 minutes. And after I baked, that is when I sanded. And I started with a 240 for the edges, and after that I went to 400, and then I went to 800, and then I buffed. I do not recommend to go higher than 800, because as much as you want it to be shiny, you don't want it to be too shiny. Generally these are not lacquered, so you're supposed to have the shininess that the natural snake skin would have. And I decided to go full American West on this, and I have these little texture mats that are kind of tiled, and they have all kind of pictograms. So I have the granite clay, granite pearl clay run on the fourth thickest setting, and that would be a 3 on my atlas. And after which I'm using a little oval cutter. And now be careful, I did not use Glad cling wrap, because I want the edges to be actually fairly straight, and because only like that they will look like actual metal, actual stamp cut metal. Then after I place the I'm using the wax, the old silver Prima marketing wax, and I'm putting some on before I put the little cameos, or however you want to call them, and then I'm going to place some bacon bond on the back. And you see I have 6, so I'll have to kind of take in, you know, little points of reference when I place them on the bangle, so they would be at exact distances. So see, I place them around, and I'm going to place the first one Careful to place it symmetrical on the both edges, and exactly on the opposite side than the other. And then I'm going to place the second one, and then the one on the opposite side of it. On the perfect opposite side. And then I'm going to place the fifth one, and again the one on the opposite side. This time I'm going to bake only for about 20 minutes, after which, when it's cooled, I'm going to put a little bit more wax just on the cameos, not on the edge of the cameo, just the surface. And then I'm going to buff, and that will be it. That will be, there you go, my little American West style faux snakeskin with silver cameos bracelet bangle. Happy claim!